Good morning, this is Brian Whitten and ET Art. I have found a purpose to come back and make another video, and I said I would if I found something important enough to address. Before I get started, if you're 12 years old or younger, might want to go and get your parents to have a look at this video first, and if they say it's okay, it's fine. For all the rest of us who have been on my channel, here is my videos. This is ET Art by B. Whitten. I brought this up here because there have been a few people subscribed to what is my old channel. This is the new channel, and it's been here for quite some years now. And all of my work here, you can see that I've actually made many videos. A smarter man may have made a lot less. So like I say, I do have people that have actually said things about my brilliance or whatever. Really, quite frankly, I'm not an exceptionally brilliant person at all. I'm a very much run-of-the-mill person. I probably achieve in certain areas reasonably well, and others not so. Mathematics and calculus would be one that I would fall in the category of not so. So to be doing this is really quite an amazing thing. But I wanted to bring and start with this today because I want to go on and explain a few things, but I also don't want to repeat myself. I'm going to call this video Nibirus Cycle-Part3 because it does touch on Nibirus cycle, but it also is very important because there is one thing, one movement of Earth that I couldn't account for the way it was managed. In other words, the people that are coming here to straighten the Earth's axis and do all such things, there was one movement of Earth that I couldn't explain. So what I'm going to do today is explain that at about 1 o'clock last night I saw something and I thought that is how it's done. And now I understand the process, and understanding the process I can then work out how and which part gets done first. So I wanted to start here first because I didn't want to go back and repeat myself and just make, as far as the Earth, there's one here called A Hell of a Ride. That's actually one that shows us the things on Earth that tell us how fast Earth moves when it straightens up, and when the skewing of Earth's magnetic plane is no longer skewed to the Sun's magnetic plane, it rips it very quickly straight and thrusts it upwards about 8,000 miles. Spins the Earth at a 16-hour day. Effectively it takes about 34 minutes, and we're all dead within the first seconds of minutes. So you wouldn't even get past the first minute because it is in actual fact like getting hurled west at about 6,000 miles an hour, and that is the slowest of the movements. So I wanted to just let you know that that is a good one to go back and have a look at that. From a point of view of what they do to resolve the problems, this continental shift video is also important, but I made a mistake in this one of trying to pick the day and a date. Okay, so there are mistakes in them. It's not something I thought I was going to be doing. It's not to say that there are not other cycles in here, the breeding stock, and where I started to work out, see these are over a year ago that I was putting up the fact of problems and issues with breeding for different races. And before I go on, well, I will address an issue at the end of this of what's going on at the Earth at the moment, and I'll get back to that after this. So I'm not saying that there's not mistakes in these. There are. It's not something that I set out to do, and I have made mistakes, and I just wanted to point out a couple there. All of them do have their merits and some very good bits within each, but there are mistakes. It's one of those things. It's not something I would imagine. What I'm writing here and what I'm putting down is known by a great many people. One would be the royal families of Europe and the global elite, the Masons. They know what I'm writing and what I'm putting in with these videos is correct. I also have had somebody say to me, you know, I have long nails on my hand. When you see my hand swing up in front of the screen here, I will also explain that at the end of the video. So we'll go and have a look at what it is that I've now come to an understanding of. You'll have to forgive the flicking on the screen here. I am actually videotaping my TV again. This is a freeze frame, or I should say one of my videos playing. It's one of the ones I suggested we go and have a look at. But I wanted to put this here because the problem I had, there's one of the processes or movements of Earth is an upwards motion. That's why I said go and have a look at the A Hell of a Ride video, because there are many things that tell us how long things take to straighten out and how fast it happens. The movement of Earth, when the shifting plane of rotation around the Sun has gotten to a point where this skew angle is not there any longer, and the Earth is immediately thrust up straight. It comes up in what is a narrow portion. You'll note that I've drawn these just like this, where in reality it is not what it is. It's just easier for me to explain it because these are more like balloon fields. This will go like this all the way over to the other side of the Sun. And the same here. So each of these portions are more if you can imagine an orange peel, and ever bigger orange peels going out here, that this was the situation. Our Earth is the distance from the Sun so that it comes up into this narrow portion. Because when it was pushed away, this line going across here, being representative of the Sun's horizontal plane, I'll insert the one or two of these plates here. We've discussed them before. They are in actual fact telling us about that very plane. The Earth, before it was pushed away from here, it's pushed away in a way that the pole shift doesn't take place. And that is why we get this thrust upwards, because it is attracted to the other side of this plane. And that's where the 8,000 mile thrust upwards. It was the one movement I couldn't understand how they remedied that issue. Now I will very quickly go through the motions. So the tilting of the axis like this is managed by a combination of two things: the moon's movement away from Earth, but also the movement of mass within, which is why I said go and look at continental shift as well. The mass of Earth is unbalanced. If it comes up and sits within this plane, it has to be balanced because it's in two opposing fields of the Sun, and just like any flywheel, it needs to be balanced when it sits in here. But the motion upwards, I thought initially that what we were seeing possibly was, and I have said that they shift water around the core of Earth, and they do. That is how they compensate for the speed of rotation. We can't live on this Earth in a 16-hour day. It would be spinning too quickly. It would force an ice age. Of course, I would imagine the oceans do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. But the best they can do here is about a 21-hour day. What they do is put water around the core, and like this inserted image here, where you can watch this video. I'm sure there's no problem with it. It's actually Sydney University put this out, and they said that when you spin a real big heavy weight on the end of this stick, you can lift it up, whereas you flat out lift it off the ground. It's basically the same principle, and they use the same principle within the solar system, designing it the way they have. So in other words, water will turn around the core, lessening the apparent mass of Earth, therefore slowing its ability to be able to spin a 16-hour day. They end up with a 21-hour day. And that is one of the motions. The other motion is the tilt of the axis, which I've also mentioned. The other motion is the speed through space, which is once again, as soon as the moon is dragged away from Earth, the speed of Earth through space increases because the mass, the combined mass, is no longer there. So there were three things. The fourth one, this upwards motion, was the one I could never ever be 100%. I thought initially that the cycle in here of the water would have changed the polarity, but it doesn't, because it would be north, south, and you still haven't done anything by cycling, excuse me, water around the core. So there had to be another way. Now before I go on, I just want to recap very quickly what we have learned from this crop circle, and at least one of two options. I've said that what we're seeing here is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, and that we are seeing with each pass of Nibiru the removal of one of these planets. And I've got videos on, like I said, on there that say Jupiter's departure. I'm not 100% certain whether Jupiter is taken away, as in my last video I suggested, well, maybe what we're seeing here. If we look at this here and this here, we're seeing Jupiter, instead of being removed altogether, possibly moved into the outer ring of rotation of Earth, which is beyond Mars. And Jupiter may be pulled into here. Because in actual fact, if you stop and look at these, you see the build-up of these planets, the very same here. So what they may be doing is adding mass in this portion of the Sun's field. I will show you something else. So my problem was then saying, okay, well there was something with this that actually told me the answer. And looking at it from this angle wasn't quite as good as looking at it from another angle. It may be that we're seeing Jupiter not necessarily move, not be gone or taken, but the pass of Nibiru causes it to snap into this ring of rotation, and that Nibiru's pass, it must have something to do with the centre of mass of the solar system, dependent on which way planets spin and so on and so on and so on. That the pass of Nibiru creates a situation where Jupiter is moving in to the ring of rotation out beyond Mars. I just wanted to say that before I moved on with the next process. Now this diagram I have shown you a few times, and in my last video I suggested that what we're seeing also in the multiple planes, there are things that are left out of here obviously. I've only just put Earth's ring of rotation around here and the outer ring of rotation that I just spoke of. Jupiter would be then on this one here. So what we're seeing here is multiple fields. I've left things off here for the ease of explanation. I realise it's not like this, but I've tried to indicate some of the balloon fields in a way that they are like this. And the most important part about this diagram was to understand that there were three portions of the horizontal plane, or at least I should say two portions of the horizontal plane. These outer ones here seem to be taken care of mostly by the vertical fields, although, like I said, I'm not 100% certain. I'm not a physicist and I do not build solar systems, but certainly this has been designed to do certain tasks. And I said that there is one of these planes here that goes through the same cycle in the 65,000 year cycle. I'll insert a diagram here, which is a parchment created from a temple in Egypt. The circled portion at the top is showing us the maximum solar cycle, it's 337,000 years. The last portion on the most left side is one 65,000 year cycle, and in that one 65,000 year cycle we're seeing the planes, because of the management of mass of planets within each of the planes, it can be drifting that way, but then at the end of the 65,000 it flips over like that within this. And I said to you that I strongly suggest that one of these planes here is not flipping the whole plane. It doesn't take the whole lot of this, but only half of it. And I showed you this inserted plate and said that there are 6 rings of rotation in each of these, and that we looked at this plate, the maximum number was 6. So therefore it is only flipping half of this plate. I've also found another plate that shows us exactly that. I'll show it to you. This is the plate I wanted to show you. It confirms, in my opinion, what I've just shown you on my drawn diagram. The difference between, well, have a look at this plate that I insert now and this other one. Look at the swirls. They look like 6s and 9s, but they're actually talking about the change of the rotation of Earth on its axis in that case. But they're sporadic. They're all over the plate. They're not in uniform, you know, and placed in a uniform manner. That's because the 44,000 year cycles and 48,000 year cycles are variable, and we are talking there about the Earth's, the movement of the Earth, right? In other words, the spinning in which direction on its axis. This is different. Have a look at this third plate I show you now. Once again we have uniformity, just like we do within this portion of this plate. In other words, what they're saying to us, this does not change. This is a cycle. This is talking about the sun's plane flipping here. It's done the same time every time within that 65,000 year portion of that 337,000 year total time for a solar cycle. Whether we, at the end of this, whether we are a binary star system, I strongly suspect we are, whether we drop off the cycle as a binary star system like others, I don't know. It's a long way away from now, so it's really probably irrelevant to a degree. But I did want to point out the fact that that plate also seems to confirm that the manipulation here is the very planes of the sun are manipulated by the build-up of mass within different fields of the sun, these being three different portions, just as my drawn diagram. The one other thing I wanted to show you that confirmed the movement upwards. I had a friend of mine post this the other day, and I believed I knew what it meant. I believe that this disc is actually telling us a very important thing, and I've just already said to you that what we're seeing a thrust upwards between the two balloon fields to sit above the plane. So if this is the plane of the sun, I'm not saying it doesn't mean other things. There's text written on this. Like I said, it would be an Englishman version of somebody else's language, so I'm not even going to bother with a lot of this. I have quite a few people with PhDs in Egyptology that would dismiss my theories very quickly. I have a feeling they'll be probably changing their mind pretty soon. But listen, the reason I wanted to bring this back is just the balloon fields here. To me, this was initiating the same thing. The thrust was up above here. Up here, it actually splits the planet in half. It doesn't survive this process. It's 120,000 miles an hour straight up. These speeds are calculable. There are, that's why I wanted you to go back and look at those other videos, because you can calculate speeds. So that's what I said, because the pole shift hasn't happened, it is immediately thrust up to sit above the plane. Also seems to be sending us a date here. It's actually saying the 4th of the 7th. I actually thought Independence Day was actually going to be, but I'm giving up on dates. I can tell you now, I think I'm more concerned about the process. So this was the problem. How did we get around this thrust upwards? I could account for the way they managed each and every of the other three movements by the message they've left here, and I just never saw it. It was there in front of me, but I just didn't twig. So I'll show you what at about 1 o'clock last night I finally worked out what happens and how that thrust upwards is avoided. Now I've brought us back to this crop circle because the answer is actually here, and I said in my last video, Unlimited Energy, about the compression of the lesson of compression, in my opinion, through electromechanical means, through magnetic fields and varying magnetic fields, the ability to shrink what was a litre of water. If we could shrink a litre of water to 700 mil, 600 mil, and then back to a litre, the physical weight of the water stays the same, but its mass reduces and increases and reduces, is unlimited energy driven by purely changes in electromagnetic fields. That is why I went that way. But right in front of me, and I didn't even see it, the very same thing is being taught us here. In other words, how that problem, that upthrust is resolved. I have always looked at this from this angle, and there was something that I didn't see. And this is yet another crop circle, a different one than the one I showed you, but it is exactly the same in design. Less the little bits and pieces that are strung off the back of here. If I went back to the other inserted image now, you can see that this is void of the additional bits here, which didn't really make a whole lot of difference because I saw them and looked at them, but I couldn't understand what they were referring to. But here, there is a significant difference, and what I would like to do is zoom in a little to the lower portion here. If I said, as I suggested to you, that Nibiru's pass pulls Jupiter from the ring of rotation around the sun that it's on the plane that it's on, and pulls it into this ring of rotation, being here as the first pass of Nibiru, the next one that's going to happen, and this is possibly within 12 months. It could be within 6 months, I do not know. But the one thing that you notice here is that each of these planets, and the movement here is inwards. See this? It's actually compressing because of the replacement of Jupiter on that ring of rotation. It is now changing the location of the rings of rotation by compressing them. Which would mean, when we go back here, and come back here now, where we are now, have moved these rings. So in other words, this one is no longer here. It's compressed these fields. The Earth is spinning with a skewed plane to the plane of the Sun. So when this happens, and when Jupiter is pulled in from Nibiru's pass, we are shielded by another body. They say that that is the problem. My problem was that it doesn't matter. They say here that it's an 8,000 thrust upwards, 8,000 miles. The plane of rotation of Earth, it's easy to work out. I will tell you some numbers. 93 million miles to the Sun, 180 degrees, and 6,000 years. Look at this inserted image. It is the top of the Statue of Liberty. The very same thing of 6,000 years, and 180 degrees is written into that. The strange thing is, she's thrusting up something on fire, which would be exactly what our planet would do should it go through this process of thrusting the whole body of Earth above this plane. What happens when Nibiru comes through, it moves Jupiter's, I'm certain it moves it into the outer ring of rotation of Earth, which is 186 million miles from the Sun. Twice as far as what Earth is away. And what happens then is, when that happens, because Earth is skewed, it's not greatly manipulated. It is also shielded from another body that they've told us will come across the solar system, and because we are skewed to that field, I would expect it travel within that field so that it doesn't disrupt Earth's cycles. And what happens then, instead of us coming up here, that Nibiru's pass and the movement of Jupiter has compressed these, so that now we're coming up here. We're coming up in the balloon field. Our planet hasn't moved any further from the Sun, but the field itself has changed. So instead of us coming up here, the field has moved this way, and we're now coming up in this area here, and that is how they avoid the upwards thrust of Earth. And it's taken me ages, so if I sound happy, I am happy, because in actual fact, it is that I perceive that I missed out on, basically. Just disintegrate. And so when we come back to our crop circle, that is what I'm absolutely certain we are seeing. We are seeing the shifting of mass here compress the rings of rotation, and therefore Earth is no longer coming up in that narrow portion, but in the balloon field, and therefore doesn't have the issue. And there, and from that point, we make sense, because the movement, the length of time that it would have taken to get to where it was is about 4 months. It's 120 days. You can't shield Earth that long from what is our normal structure here with the sun's rays and whatnot, because we would freeze to death. It would cause all sorts of problems. This solves that issue. It is logical, it makes sense, and it also is indicated as such when we see this movement here, that each time a mass is added here. One other fact, Earth and the Moon tend to operate as an individual or a single identity as such. I wonder, when we see this, whether the perception is that we are being told here that one ring of rotation, when we think of the theories of movement on Earth. In other words, we drop a baseball or a tennis ball, providing the weight is different, but they will hit the ground at the same time. So, you know, these are very basic, you know, understandings in physics, which is good. This is probably why I understand it, because it's pretty basic. Here I wonder as to whether we're being told the same thing. So in other words, if there was a ring of rotation being that ring of rotation that Earth sits upon, when it's pushed out beyond Mars, when Jupiter takes up its location here, are they telling us here that we can also put more planets on the one ring? And because that they are a total mass of each and every one of the planets there, that they actually don't go any faster. That this one, because it might be more massive than this, and this more massive than this, but because they're all on the same ring, it may be that they don't travel any faster in space because the mass is combined within the one ring or the one field of the Sun. Interesting scenario, but I wanted to mention it because it's about the only thing that I can understand that seems to indicate that. But without doubt, I would see this movement here stepping and compressing these fields in, so that, like I said, as I've said, we do not come up in that narrow portion anymore, and this thrust upwards is avoided in that manner. So that's accounted for all four of those movements, and the management of which I believe I've explained. Well, I thought I might get in front of the camera just to finish off this video, because as I would expect from planetary motion perspective, I really haven't got any more to add. And I am really happy because that actually does explain what up to this point I couldn't explain. There were other ways of doing things. They did not make sense and they took far too long. Once we move into this area, I'm absolutely certain the rest of it's right, as far as, you know, an ability of many of us to breed on planet Earth anymore when it stands straight, and the cycles of the moon change and such things that I've explained in my other videos. It's pretty daunting even then. There are people on our planet that they are being given options to tell us the truth. In other words, the royals of Europe, the Masons and the world elites, they know what I'm putting in these videos is correct. I'm very concerned that ever since I said that the Caucasians are amongst those races that have to leave Earth and that can no longer breed on a straight standing Earth scenario, they seem to have released a virus and a vaccine. Personally myself, I'd be very dubious. I have messaged quite a lot of people, my Prime Minister for one, and every state premier over the last 24 hours I would expect, or 48 hours over the weekend. They were all sent what I perceive is also a message, and within the message, and that's a sentence, okay? For me to do my job properly, I have to tell them why the problem persisted. In other words, why it happened. And it is a problem with human genome, a corruption in genome of an intellectual type that, like I said, this perception that chopping up a little baby and eating a baby, my God. And I do what I do now. It might sound like I'm giving you an out to a degree, I am. But to a degree I'm not, because now you know. And I can just say before I move on, last year in December, President Trump had a press release in front of a landscape building supply place which was next door to a sex shop, and people wondered as to why he had that press release where he was. I mean, now you know why. The landscape side of it is because the land masses have to be cut and moved. They need to be balanced to stand the globe straight in the two opposing fields. The other thing is that we cannot breed any longer, which is why it was next door to a sex shop. They know full well what I'm putting in these videos is 100% correct. Well, I say 100%, very, very close to that. Certainly from certain aspects it will be right. It's a problem, yes. It's a very daunting thing. I'm a white person myself. I'm a Caucasian. I have my ancestry from Britain and Ireland and so on. So I am sitting here in the same boat as many others. As daunting as it is, I look at when I actually initially went to kick off all my videos and YouTube channel. I'm not even into social media, quite frank. I did what I did many years ago, starting not long after 2012. I was absolutely certain my mother had been murdered. I suspected of things long before that, but there was, I won't go into that, but I'm just saying to you, it's been a long road. I'm here because of a necessity, a social necessity, if you want to call it that, a requirement to step up when you have to. That's why I'm here. I wouldn't even be on social media. So having said that, it's why I probably don't say, click subscribe, click the button, hit this, do that, because I'm not here to make money either. I have a feeling that if I'd actually sought to make money out of what the message was here, I wouldn't have got to the end of the story. So I'm glad that I took the approach that money wasn't the important thing in understanding all of this. I appreciate all the help I've had from a lot of other people that have sent me things that have helped me get to where I needed to get, which was the end, and fully understanding. And as for the rest of you lot, the ones that are keeping this from everybody, that know full well a greater majority of what I put here is correct, I'll be honest with you, I may look like I'm giving you an out in saying that in the Bible it says, God forgives all. That message is for us here right now, and primarily, I'm not saying we're not all going to be judged, but I'm certainly not going to be judged for murdering, raping or eating children and doing such things. Many of you will be. This is the issue. They say in the Bible, God will forgive all. In essence, that message is for us now. I'm giving you the reason why you have the problem. It is a genetic issue. It is why the process is done. It is why the filtering service, that is this tilted access cycle of Earth, is done. It's exactly why. It's to identify those people with that mutation in genome. Now you know that. So I might give you an out in saying they would forgive all, and they will. Because that's the problem. They created the cycle that created the problem because they have to. But once you know that, and you still keep this shut, and you still hide the truth from the rest of humans on this planet, mate, I'm not kidding. I might be giving you an out, it might seem that way, but I'm telling you now, we are being told they have the ability of time travel. You will die many times. You're sought. The whole process here was to elongate your natural lives. They will give it to you, an elongated natural life, and the time frame is set up in that cycle. Your maximum penalty is 16,000 years. The minimum is 3,700. Be honest, I think I would be putting my hand up and telling the truth of what's being hidden. Because I can tell you now, if you go about trying to make them out to be an enemy and use the armies and air force and navies of the world to fight them, that will be the last decision you guys ever make, and you will regret it for many thousands of years. You will be grabbed from whoever it is that's ripping your body apart, eating it, whether it be a dinosaur or another bunch of people that think eating human flesh is acceptable. That will be what you're doing. 1 second from your last breath, bang, you're going to go back in time and do it all again. Over and over and over and over. Thousands of years of death after death after death, painful as they are going to be. Why do they give you so long? You've had 3 years now, and yet the penalty like that in a natural life, still for thousands of years, makes you realise that these people that come back here are that smart that they know full well there's many choices. We get 3 choices every time with everything, because in a spiritual realm it's exactly the same, and it is forever. That is why you're given so many chances to come good. because I can tell you now, the alternative is certainly being painted to be white, I'm telling you. It's not a good road to be on. So let's change things. And like I said, it may seem like I'm giving you an out. I'm certainly not. You bastards killed my mother. Having said that, I got a job to do, and my job is to be done properly, and to do it properly I have to tell you why you have the problem. So give yourselves a chance. Give yourselves a chance. Fess up, shut the thing down, tell the truth, and let's get moving, because we're going to have to move off this planet. A lot of us have to do. I believe the number we are told of the people left here is about 3 billion, and about 4 billion of us have to leave if we wish to reproduce. We need to do the right thing, and I'm absolutely certain when people understand the full concepts and understanding of what these people have done and what you bad guys have done, I would understand that a lot more things will become far, far more manageable, and I would expect them to assist us in every possible way once you boys open your gob. So pack up these sterilisation vaccines, pack up your lies, and let's get moving forward. And to finish off, I did say I would explain the long nails. As a young fella at school, I was in a band, and I used to try and play bar chords and rock and roll and whatnot. I would get cramps in my hands. I couldn't even let plectrum out of my hand, would lock up. I'd have the same trouble with this hand playing bar chords. It would just freeze. This hand would do the same thing. It's probably a little bit of arthritis. So I then learnt to play guitar a little bit differently, and rather than holding a plectrum, I found it a lot easier to play chords that were not bar chords. And blues is what I like to play most, so I learned a whole lot of other chords, and find that playing my little bar chords were not required anymore, and that was why you see long nails on my right hand. That was for one of my German friends. I thought he might appreciate that. And just before I go, I'll leave you with this. that's all from Brian Whitten and E.T. Art. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.